Not only are we destroying our public forests, our ecosystems and wildlife, not only are we shredding those to pieces, our forest ecosystems, we're shredding the Colorado Constitution. Welcome, Wild Ones. This is Josh Schlossberg, host of the Green Root Podcast, the official podcast of Eco Integrity Alliance, where we're on a quest to uncover the roots of the ecological crisis. Solo episode this week, as we do every other week. Next week, we'll have another great guest, but this week, you're putting up with me. I need to talk to you about the shredding of Colorado's Constitution by clearcutting. Okay, what is this guy talking about now? Well, let me inform you, or at least offer my opinion, and you can judge whether this is valid or not. So what we have right now is there are Trump-aligned logging interests that are gathering signatures for a Colorado ballot initiative. It's right now numbered as 308. And what it would do is it would take some sales tax on sporting goods and equipment to fund, guess what? What's Colorado's favorite thing to do? Cut down potentially millions more acres of public forest. So we're talking clear cutting, industrial logging, endangered species habitat, old growth forest in protected roadless areas. And it's under the cover of recreation and, quote, conservation. And of course, the Trojan horse that is wildfire pretense logging. So how is this happening? Why is this happening? When is this happening? All right. So we found out about this early this year. We did try to engage some bigger players who had more experience in addressing this. That's been somewhat successful, but here's what it's coming down to right now. It's just Eco Integrity Alliance and a few of our grassroots partners for now who are addressing this. So I just wanted to preface it that way, that you're only going to be hearing about this pretty much right now from us. We're trying to get more folks involved. And in fact, later today, I have a call with somebody from a larger organization. So hopefully I'll be able to change our tune on that. But here's the deal. So the Nature Conservancy is, of course, behind this. For those who think the Nature Conservancy is an environmental group, they're not. They have $1.8 billion annual budget. They're a working lands group. So in some cases, they might protect a bog where you can't extract out of it. That's great. Good on you for that. But mostly they use that as cover to do extraction on public lands. So that's industrial logging, livestock ranching, all sorts of other schemes on public lands. Again, they do some stuff that is positive, but I would say they use that as greenwash to do the mostly negative. They get hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government to do this stuff. That's just a fact. Links to it. I will show you the links. It's all reality. And what we recently found out was the Nature Conservancy is employing former Trump admin officials, House Republican leadership aides who have been pretty anti-environmental, including Senator Mike Lee, who's been pushing all the sell-off of public lands, and then folks from anti-environmental, pro-fossil fuels, conservative think tank operatives as their lobbyists. The Nature Conservancy is hiring anti-environmental government operatives as their lobbyists. Facts. 3 links to that. So that's happening. So the Nature Conservancy is behind this ballot initiative, which we're calling the Clearcut Initiative. And it's co-backed by an entity called Western Resource Advocates. They're a large NGO with dozens, scores of staff people, and Conservation Colorado, which used to be a conservation group in Colorado and now is promoting public lands logging and this Clearcut Initiative. Now, these 3 groups, they were the ones who testified against this home hardening bill, this bill that would have taken a small percentage of logging money, to actually protect homes from wildfire instead of the pretense that the logging will do so. Just a small percentage of it would have gone to grants for hardening the homes, which is the thing that actually protects the homes, the right materials and all of that sort of stuff. It would have been grants for low-income, elderly, and disabled Coloradans. The Nature Conservancy, Western Resource Advocates, and Conservation Colorado testified against that bill. We did whole podcasts and articles about that. Media wouldn't even cover it at all. I was able to get an opinion piece published after months of insistence, but that's what happened and is happening. So these entities who are pro-logging and anti-protecting communities, if it means taking any money away from logging, we engaged with them because they said, well, we're open to some feedback. So not the Nature Conservancy, but Conservation Colorado Western Resource Advocates said that on this public lands call that I was subsequently kicked off of after addressing this privately and politely. Anyway, so the NGOs ignored this letter that we drafted, and it was signed by 20 Colorado conservation groups. Some are large, some medium-sized, some small grassroots. And the letter said, it didn't even come out against the ballot measure that would promote logging. It said, hey, are there any safeguards? Are there any limits on the logging? Like, will this include clear cutting, old growth logging, endangered species habitat, roadless areas? That was all it was about. It wasn't saying you bums or we hate this. It's just, are there any safeguards since you wanted feedback? They didn't even respond to the letter. So what we're dealing with is folks operating in bad faith. And this is the problem with this initiative. If it was out there saying, hey, everyone, do you want to cut down and clear cut forests and old growth habitat, all that stuff? And even though the science shows that this doesn't work, do you want to do this? And people were like, no. So here's what they did instead. The whole thing is couched under recreation and conservation. Now, conservation, yes, they've gotten away with saying that logging forests is somehow protecting forests. It's nonsense. The one kernel of truth is that basically the best pro-fuel reduction argument is that some small tree and understory removal in some forests might sometimes lessen the severity of some lower intensity fires that are already easily contained by firefighters and actually considered good fire by these same entities. It does nothing for high severity wildfire, which is a product of weather and wind. It's nothing to do with the forest density. And in fact, this logging not only doesn't prevent the spread of fire, it can increase the spread of flames and embers by drying out, heating up the forest, and opening it to wind. So that's the truth behind whether this stuff is effective. But my point is just like, if they're pretending it's conservation, they can maybe weasel in some argument in a few minor cases, not the cases they bring up. They bring up high severity wildfire all the time. They say the Marshall Fire, they say protecting communities. All those things are false. But here's where it's really egregious. The half of this funding from the Clearcut Initiative would go towards, quote, recreation. Now, this is an entity that actually even does some logging, believe it or not. It's called GoCo. I have more details on that. I don't want to get into that too much, but let's just say most of that is, industrial recreation. Does Colorado have a lack of recreation? Like, why do we need to fund more there? Are there not enough trails and roads? That's all we are. But that is what most Coloradans are. Their interaction with nature is through recreation. I recreate, you probably recreate, okay. But that's how they're getting in the door. They're saying, it's going towards recreation. Half of it's funding recreation. Well, what's wrong with that? Let's just pretend there's nothing wrong with that. Then they're slipping in the logging stuff. So the other half goes to, quote, conservation, which is all logging, pretty much all logging, almost entirely logging. So that is the deviousness of this petition. You go out there and you say, hey, everyone, you like recreation I would be like, yeah. People don't know any better. Media doesn't cover this. NGOs are on the wrong side of this. Most people don't know about this. So they're being fooled. But here's what's even worse. So I'm going to read a little section of it, just a line here. So the language of the petition, which you have to gather enough signatures to get it on the ballot. I maybe didn't explain that, and I don't remember the number of signatures you need. So they're going in front of grocery stores, getting signatures for this. Nature Conservancy is paying for people to collect signatures. So the language promises, quote, a portion of revenue from the state sales tax on sporting goods and equipment to conserve and protect Colorado's water, land, and forests, prevent wildfires, I'll get back to that in a second, and support outdoor recreation training and activities. So notice what they snuck in there. So other than the fact that they're making up that this is conserving and protecting and then supporting recreation, whatever, they said prevent wildfires. Now, hold on a second here. Here's the truth. Not even the Forest Service, which carries out the federal timber sale program and gets hundreds of millions of dollars every year for fuel reduction logging, will say that their logging prevents wildfire. They won't even use that specific terminology because it's untrue. And unfortunately, media outlets will use that. I actually had an opinion piece finally published in Denver Post where they changed my term without my permission, that I used fuel reduction or put something in quotes, and they put in wildfire prevention logging. And I would never use that term because not even the agencies use that term, but our media has used that term. So that's become inserted into the lexicon, even though most of the agencies have backed away from that idea, because guess what? You can't prevent wildfires no matter how many damn trees you cut down. The argument is that, and it's false, that you can mitigate it, you can reduce the severity, prevent the spread. We can debunk pretty much all of that, but the prevent wildfire, like that's just physically impossible. So a natural wildfire, of course, is pretty much always from wildfire. You can't stop that. 84% of wildfires are human caused. And the best way to keep them from starting is you can increase patrolling out there and you can shut down old logging roads. And because it's 94.9% of human caused wildfires start within a half a mile of roads. So that might be an argument for prevention. And Eco Integrity Alliance had circulated a sign-on letter to that end to focus on actual wildfire prevention. The other piece is 3 to 10% of wildfires are caused by power lines. So maybe burying the power lines, things like that. That might be prevention, monitoring. Okay, we'll give you that. That's not what this Clearcut Initiative is for at all. It's logging. It would do the opposite of preventing wildfires. Open up forests to logging, more roads, more people. So what we have here is it's a ballot initiative that's similar to promising we're going to teach you how to jump off a roof and fly like Superman. It's inaccurate, ridiculous, and here's the clincher. It's not just a lie, and it is a lie because it is intentionally putting out falsehoods. The Nature Conservancy, Western Resource Advocates, they know that they cannot prevent wildfires, but they know that language has gotten out there. So that's a lie, but it may be unconstitutional. So the Clearcut Initiative may be unconstitutional, and this is what we're trying to get to the bottom of right now. So let's just say that you're allowed to lie in an initiative. You're allowed to say that people can fly like Superman. Okay, and then if people are tricked into voting for that, there are things that can be addressed once it's on the ballot. But in the meantime, here is where I believe that this ballot initiative, this 308, the Clearcut Initiative, actually violates the Colorado Constitution. So there's something in the Colorado Constitution called the single subject rule. So the quote from Article 5, Section 1 states, quote, no measure shall be proposed by petition containing more than one subject. You're like, okay, well, why would they have that? Well, so this is a memo from the Office of Legislative Legal Services of the Colorado General Assembly. So they're the ones who decide this stuff. So they say that the purpose of that single subject rule is, quote, to focus debate on pending legislative measures, okay, to avoid log rolling, which they say is the joining together of unrelated measures to gain votes for passage of a measure. And to provide helpful public notice of the contents of a bill. So here's the petition language again of the Clearcut Initiative. A portion of revenue from the state sales tax on sporting goods and equipment to conserve and protect Colorado's water, land, and forests, prevent wildfires, support outdoor recreation training and activities. So again, claiming to protect land and water, that's nonsense. The absurdity that logging can prevent wildfires, and then supporting industrial recreation. Those are three different things, and they're all at cross purposes. Recreation is not the same thing as conservation. Logging sure as heck is not conservation, and it's not recreation. So those are three topics. So I looked into this, and the state of Colorado's Initiative and Title Board is responsible for approving this language for signature collection. Now, apparently there was a window in which we could have challenged this, and we missed the window. I'm going to admit, folks, I am above my weight in this regard. I do not have a lot of experience with state legislation. So that's why we need these larger NGOs, most of which right now are actually promoting logging, but some of which are kind of engaging, some of them on the fence. We're trying to really encourage them to get involved because they have the expertise to have addressed this. We were trying to figure out the best way to deal with this, and there was a time where we could have done something with the help of attorneys, and we didn't have that. So that's a bummer. And yeah, I have to take responsibility for missing the window on this and acknowledging that this is something that is outside of my purview to a certain degree, but a few of us, we need to address this, and we're going to do what grassroots groups do, which is get the public engaged, and hoping that some of the better funded, more influential and connected and maybe even knowledgeable entities, NGOs, help us with this. But so how did this get through even without a challenge? Shouldn't they have been able to say, count to three? These are three different things, not one. So this is a violation of the single subject rule. Why did the state of Colorado not figure it out? Well, I don't know, but here is something that is factual. The state of Colorado spends tens of millions of dollars every year in taxpayer dollars for public lands logging. The current administration, the Governor Polis administration, is very much in favor of that. The House Agriculture, Water, Natural Resources Committee votes down anything that would protect forests and wildlife, and they let pretty much everything. And they let through most things that would harm those things. So the state of Colorado is all aboard the logging train. But it also, state of Colorado takes tens of millions in federal dollars to destroy our forests here. This includes $26 million alone in 2025. So the state of Colorado has a vested interest in getting federal dollars to keep logging. So Colorado is a blue state, but our policies on public lands logging, they march lockstep with the Trump administration's executive order to expand timber production, and then this almost immediate declaration after that of a fake wildfire emergency across 59% of national forests, 112 million acres, to fast track getting out the cut. So I am not alleging that there is corruption in terms of the Initiative and Title Board, that they love logging so much that they just decided to ignore reality. But I do believe that there is a great deal of influence and kind of this conventional wisdom that this logging is a positive thing. And so maybe unconsciously, or there was a willingness to turn a blind eye to a situation that would create more logging that maybe the state itself didn't have to directly pay for because it's through this sales tax. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but that is quite egregious and alarming that there is a Clearcut Initiative that not just lies about being able to prevent wildfires, that even the nation's biggest loggers, the U.S. Forest Service, wouldn't suggest, but that there are not just one subject, there are three subjects in this. And so when people go to sign it, they hear conservation, they hear recreation, and then it just lumps in wildfire. That's a confusing thing, and it is a way to do what they claim, ironically, is logging rolling, maybe, the joining together of unrelated measures to gain votes for passage of a measure. So that's what's going on in Colorado. Not only are we destroying our public forests, our ecosystems and wildlife, not only are we shredding those to pieces, our forest ecosystems, we're shredding the Colorado Constitution. And all of this is ironically not reducing the threat of wildfire to our communities. It's increasing the threat by logging, drying out, heating up forests, opening them to wind, increasing the threat of wildfire to harming our homes, livelihoods, and lives. So that's what's going on in Colorado. I'm bummed about it, but there is a way forward, and that is through public engagement. I still believe in the grassroots. I don't really believe in legislative reform, but I think we have to engage in that. But if the system is so rigged that even an initiative that tells lies and doesn't even follow the Colorado Constitution gets to be out there because the Nature Conservancy is spending some of its money, part of which comes from taxpayer funding, whether the exact amount of money is going towards that, they are funded by taxpayer dollars. Well, we have to address things in a different way, and we have to build our movements to be stronger, and we have to get more public engagement. And in time, changing the culture is what's going to change media. It's going to change politics. We can't just go in there and say, hey, do the right thing, because they can't even see the right thing right now. So if you're an advocate, we need your engagement. This is something they're testing here in Colorado, but they're going to try it wherever you live as well. So these public lands, you could say they belong to everyone. They used to be inhabited by First Nations people. And right now the situation is they are under, quote, management of federal, state, county, local governments. That's what we're currently working with. But the truth of the matter is the ecosystems really only belong to themselves, in my opinion, and the wildlife that inhabits it. So that is the mindset I would like to keep putting forward while we tinker around the edges and we try to address things in this legislative way. But increasingly, it's turning out that the so-called environmental movement doesn't want to fight this stuff. We have some of the biggest so-called conservation groups promoting the most destructive stuff. We have to be doing things in a different way. That's why many of us are promoting new ways of thinking. There's something called New Direction for Public Lands, which Eco Integrity Alliance is a part of. That's about a proactive approach. It's basically the grassroots counterpart to Big Green. We're going to bring together all these folks to promote proactive, positive legislation. And one example of that, which is what Eco Integrity Alliance promotes, is biodiversity, watershed, and climate refugia. So that's what public lands will and should be in perpetuity. And that's our way to fall under the framework of the Global Biodiversity Framework, which is about protecting 30% of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems by 2030, tick, tick, tick. And then the larger half-Earth vision popularized by sociobiologist E.O. Wilson, which is about setting aside half of the planet's ecosystems, terrestrial and aquatic, for the processes of nature. We have to do that. And that is the ultimate global vision. So while we're tinkering with this little bill here in Colorado, it's a part of this larger whole, but we can't do it without your help. I am above my head here, and I need your assistance. So please engage with us in whatever way you see fit. And for those who are engaging, we really are so appreciative. You are making this all possible. And we do have a really good chance of turning things around. But for those who just listen to a podcast and then don't do anything, I don't think that's going to be enough. At the very least, like this and comment and share it, right? So I'd like to ask that low bar, but I do appreciate if you just check in and are listening to what we're saying, but please spread that along. I'm sure so many of you already are. So thank you again. And yeah, let's do this for the ecosystems, the wildlands, the wildlife, and for ourselves.